Marc Jackson, NBC Sports Philadelphia Sixers pre- and post-game analyst, and he joins us now. And Mark, you know what it really comes down to last night, the Sixers had a game in their hand. They let it slip away, but they need to figure out what adjustments to make and win on their home court.
I agree with you 100%. You know, that game was in the palm of their hand, literally, and it slipped away. You know, and so people make excuses, wasn't timeout, wasn't Ben Simmons, was TJ not being in. But the matter is, no matter what happened, the Sixers did not come out with a win. So let's go to the drawing board, find out what happened, and let's make an adjustment.
Okay, we'll get into that in a minute. Let's talk about the timeout. I heard you say last night you are not a timeout guy. Coach Lynham said he would take a timeout there. What are the pros and cons in that spot for both?
Well, now, see, first, it's all about your personnel, who you have on the floor. You have a veteran team, you have things like that. I was big growing up with watching Phil Jackson run a team and operate a team, and he would never call a timeout during those runs. And now, even when I coach youth, when a team make a run, I'm not expected to call a timeout, because what I've learned personally is when a team is on a run and you get nervous or you think you can't pull out of it and you call a timeout, that team goes to that bench with a lot of confidence, cheering, hoopla, and high-fiving. And when they come out, they seem to come out with a bigger sense of confidence before they went into the huddle. So for me, I like to try to teach on the fly. And for me, I'm not a big component of calling a timeout, because I think a coach all the coaches are very good nowadays. And I really think they could teach on the fly and make adjustments on the fly without wasting that timeout, especially the new timeout rules.
Now, on the flip side, you got a young team here. Do you change your thought process saying, all right, I do have a young team, maybe I do need to calm these guys down?
That could be one way, but I also think it's about what you work on in practice, situations in practice. I think you have to echo it every day in practice. The game's about runs. So you have to have a little signal, a little call when the team is making a 10-2 or a 10-0 run. Instead of wasting timeout, we have one last ditch effort before I call this timeout. Hey, Joel, get your butt in the post, get us a foul or score, and stop the bleeding. You know, you got to have that kind of communication with the players and that kind of trust. So with this young team, if I haven't worked on them situations in practice, I don't feel confident in what's going on, then I might call a timeout me. But or generally speaking, I don't believe in it.
See, my question really is, do you need to take a timeout to get your message to the players on the court? Slow down, guys. Let's get a bucket here. Do you need to call timeout to get that message to them?
No, you don't need. You don't need to call a timeout. It's not a need. It's not a need. It's been proof in a pudding with different coaches, different teams, that obviously you don't need to call a timeout. I just gave you many examples where you can, if you have a certain situation going on the court, if you have a certain thing, a certain eye. Like I remember playing with fortunate enough to play with AI, and I was the second leading scorer on the team in Philly, playing with AI. You know, he's freelance to do his thing. And Coach Jim O'Brien, who's now the assistant coach, ironically, with the 76ers, he used to have this look he would give us when in certain situations, when we couldn't get a shot, when AI might have had a bad night at the nightclub the day before, he used to give us this look and say, okay, let's get that ball in the mark down low and let's get fouled. And he didn't call, Jim O'Brien wasn't quick to call timeouts. He would do that. Like, he would give us his look, all right, let's get Mark the ball. Let's get a different option than AI just jacking up these shots and missing for this brief time that he didn't do a lot of. And that's the signal he had. So that's how I see it.
Marc Jackson with us. Hey, Mark, Ben Simmons, I know that some people don't put a lot of stock in plus-minus, but Ben Simmons, a minus 23 on the floor last night. Now, Embiid, 20 points, 14 rebounds, but he was a minus 8. How can the Sixers expect to win games when they're being outscored with their best two players on the floor? And by the way, two players who finished the season top 10 in the NBA in defensive rating.
I agree with you, man. How can you win when your two superstars are not performing like so? Joel Embiid has been good, hasn't been perfect, hasn't been great, but he's been giving you some good numbers on paper. One thing that's concerning to me is, and I was having this conversation a few minutes ago, with Ben Simmons, he does not have a jump shot, refuses to get a jump shot, but he's been coasting along, dominating. What I mean by dominating is able to contribute in almost every statistical box score without a jump shot. So with that being said, he's like, why do I have to get a jump shot when I'm dominating the game? I truly think the Boston Celtics has now put out the blueprint on how to stop, just load the lane up, force Ben to get sporadic, force him to see, and force him to have to score the ball around the rim. When I thought it was very daunting, is the first shot he took was an air ball directly under the rim. Instead of powering up and flushing that thing home with authority, being 6'2", 240 pounds, he decided to go up. He started jumping in the air and switch hands mid-air, and it came through air ball. Now, don't get me wrong, ladies and gentlemen. He has been terrific this season, but players do not want to change or do not want to add if they feel as though they dominate the game with their current skills. That game yesterday has to be an eye-opener to Ben Simmons and the coach, Brett Brown.
Marc Jackson's with us. Mark, I want to ask you this question then off of something that you said. How different is coaching in a regular season game as opposed to a playoff series? Because during the regular season, how come other teams didn't say, let's try this with Ben and not allow him to do this, where in a playoff series we're seeing more and more of that? How much more in-depth is the coaching in a playoff series than night to night in the regular season?
Extremely in-depth, because during the course of the year, so many games, all your assistant coaches are preparing for so many teams, but you got this one game. So you can get away with making one adjustment during the course of the game. Okay, we're expecting to blitz the pick and roll right now, guys. So that means double team is going to pick and roll. So that's making an adjustment, that big slip. So that one adjustment can get you going in a game, can make a big difference in one game. But when you play in a series of games where the team is preparing for your first adjustment, your second adjustment, your third adjustment, what that being said is you have to have different levels of depth with your coaching and your coach's assistants, because you got to be able to make adjustments on the fly, a big part of the game. And it sees how in-depth a coach is involved in the playoffs and how good they really are. I think, just like we say, I believe playoffs truly solidifies superstars in the NBA. I really think it really ink pins the coaches in to the higher echelon of coaches in this league.
And Mark, we had Asherrod Blakely on, and he talked about Ben Simmons and who defended him. He broke it down on Twitter. Aaron Baines for a possession, Jaylen Brown for 3, Al Horford for 27, Greg Monroe 2, Marcus Morris 19, Terry Rozier 2, and Marcus Smart 70. And a hashtag that said team effort. Of all those guys, who do you think frustrated Ben the most? Was it Marcus Morris or Horford?
I think it was Horford. I said before the series started, I think the only player, in my opinion, that can really give, and one of the few players in the entire NBA who's capable of guarding Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid is Al Horford. I said the best thing for the 76ers, the Boston Celtics, going into this series is to clone Horford and put him in all 5 positions. Because I think if whoever he's guarding is going to have a bad night, no matter what's going on. And he's demonstrated that. He's in such a problem to score, and he's been a thorn in the 76ers, whether he's spacing the floor, hitting threes, and bringing the ball away from the rim, or they switch out and he's diving and getting Marco Bellinelli or J.J. Redick on him on the post, or he's defending Ben, and he's using his length to defend Ben and his girth, and Ben is having a hard time trying to score over him. To me, I think Al Horford is a premier defender in his league, and I think he's one of the few players that can guard Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. Really feel that way.
Marc Jackson with us. So, Mark, talking about Ben Simmons, we all saw when he came out of the game the impact that T.J. McConnell had when he came into the game. Should they have ridden McConnell more? Were you okay with Ben then coming back in the game to replace T.J. McConnell?
Now, see, that's a touchy thing, because if you sit back and you watching the game as a fan, you're like, man, TJ's really cooking. He got it in his game. But, Ben has been your superstar the entire season. And as soon as you see that, us basketball heads, we scratching their head. We're like, you know what you got to do? You got to bring Ben back in. And people sitting around like, why you got to bring him back in? You got to leave TJ out there and ride that wave. I'm like, yeah, you ride that wave for a certain point, but you got to get your best player, one of your best players, your franchise superstar players in during their time, because that decision can fracture a relationship between a coach and a superstar, as well as fracture a chemistry between a superstar and a team. Because if you keep rocking with TJ and you leave Ben on that game, then you start asking yourself questions like OKC is doing with Carmelo Anthony. Well, should he come off the bench? Should he play this amount of minutes? Should he start the game in the game? when you're here in Philadelphia with the 76ers and the way their roster is currently made up, I truly believe you have to go back with Ben Simmons because he's still young. His mental is still fragile, even though he's been so strong the entire season. For me, if you had left him on the bench, I think questions would have came up that would have caused more negative in a locker room as opposed to positive. I think you keep DJ in. And for me personally, when they was bringing Ben in, we all knew me personally knew he was going to bring TJ off the floor. But I was like, okay, how about we try playing them together? And then if that don't work, then we take TJ off the floor. Because TJ was rocking on both ends of the floor. He was getting easy buckets for the Sixers. He was getting steals, defensive stops. He was just an energizer bunny, and he had Boston's number that time.
Now, why is that? Is that because Boston's not really game planning for 17 minutes worth of McConnell, or did McConnell just have more aggression or more, initiative last night than he normally does?
He was playing with a sister urge. He liked the entire team once, but he's a blue collar guy, sort of like Ben. But the only thing is, you don't prepare. You will live with TJ going off for 15 minutes a game, but you can't live with Ben Simmons going off for 30 minutes a game. You see the dynamic there? So you got to prepare for the team's number strength. And honestly, the team flows through Ben. Ben gets the shooters open. He runs the offense. He's the timing, the rhythm of the offense. TJ comes in and gives you similar components, but it's not the win or end all be all like Ben Simmons is. That's the important part.
Okay, so what can the Sixers do with Ben to help get him going, or do you truly agree with what he said? I just had a bad game, self-inflicted, wasn't all there mentally, or is it more what Boston's doing, or is it more Ben?
I think it's a combination of both, to be honest. First of all, Ben wouldn't be only leading the game of 1 point if it wasn't because of Boston's defense. Let's give kudos where it's due. Ben said it was all self-inflicted. And the first thing when I heard that, I was like, oh, that's an old school answer. That's something in the old school say. But nowadays, everybody's quick to give the opposing team props. Man, they defended me great. They did a great thing. Oh, they was tremendously. Why? You don't want to get on bulletin board material. And saying those things kind of cut you off there, and you have to worry about your quotes, your statements being put on the other team's bulletin board. But when he went out there and said, these are all self-inflicted, I know what I got to do. I want to change what I did. And that's bulletin board material for Boston, for Smart, for Horford. Oh, yeah? So you mean to tell me I didn't make you only have 1 point? I didn't make that 4 turnovers in the first quarter of game one? You said it was all you? Okay, we're going to go back at it game 3. So now you're getting bulletin board material, and then you got to be careful with that. But when he gave that response the first day, I was like, uh-oh, that's an old school answer right there.
Mark, there's bulletin board material, and then there's motivating your other teammates as well. Ben was asked about his confidence this morning after Friday's practice, in light of the games that he's had against the Celtics, and he said it's very high. I'm a very confident person. Every time I step on the floor, it's not going to change. However, he also said, because they asked him, well, what's Boston doing against you to limit you? He says, they're loading the paint. Somebody has to be open. We have to move the ball quicker. Is he insinuating that his teammates have to do more, and he's doing what he's supposed to be doing?
No, he's just stating obvious. He's just stating obvious that they do have to, when that team is loading up, they do got to move the ball more. They do got to make some adjustments. They do got to play a little faster because they're a fast-paced team. They're a rhythm kind of team. So he's just stating the obvious there. He's not taking a shot at Boston or his teammates. It's just that it's a fact. They got to move that ball more when he's not. They got to move. So if the team is loading up on him, that means that someone has to be open or some back doors can occur. That's what it means pretty much. It's not necessarily a cheap shot at Boston or things like that. It's just a fact.
Hey, Mark, if you play Ben and TJ together, who loses time, and what does that do for Joel Embiid? Because I would assume then you're posting Ben up. Are you now using Embiid? Are you comfortable saying you're almost a stretch 4 in that kind of configuration?
For me, Joel is so valuable because he's versatile. You can see, that's one thing. I think you can play Joel and Ben together when you want to force feed Ben the ball in the post. You can get Ben the ball in the post and space the floor with Joel. Because just sort of like Al Horford, when you want to post Ben, you can put Joel at the top of the key. Horford has to guard him, or Baines has to guard him. You can't leave Joel up there top. You can't say, oh, well, he's going to miss. Like that Shaq. No way. Joel is the new breed of 5-man. He can hit that 3. So you can't leave him up there open.
Are the Horford screens a problem for the Sixers? I mean, yesterday, Coach Lyman was on with us, and he said it's their schemes that are giving the Sixers problem. That Horford high post screen, has that been the biggest issue that the Sixers need to figure out tomorrow in Game 3?
You know, that's one of the issues. One of the issues is that. One of the issues is slowing Tatum down, too. So they got plenty of issues. But that is one because that's why Horford is who he is. And he's been playing on the same level for a numerous amount of years in the NBA. Because when you have Horford setting screens and popping, you have to defend the guards because they're getting speed running towards the rim. So you got to step in front of them, which opened Horford back up for the pop. So then you got to find a way to rotate on him. And the scheme that Boston is doing, they bring in the screens from different angles. So it's making it hard for you to rotate from one side to the other to get out there on that shooter. It's just the spacing is just so big that it leaves him wide open at times. So the 76ers got to find a way. They got to, first of all, maybe start switching these screens or hope that Al Horford has an off night.
Yeah, that's the thing with the screens is it looks like the Sixers are so confused as to what to do. They're not hedging, and they're looking like, should I follow this guy? Should I back off? Should I move with this guy? It doesn't seem that they're really comfortable figuring out how to handle these screens, even through 2 games yet.
Well, it's just Boston's system. The way they do things, they move people around. It's not as easy to say, okay, we're gonna blitz this pick. That means this pick and roll. That means double team. Or we're gonna blue it. That means they force the guy baseline and leave the pop guy open. They come with so many different looks out of their offense. They dribble handoff, sort of like the 76ers. So with that being said, there's so many different ways you have to come up with guard it because you make an adjustment. Boston has an adjustment for your adjustment. It's a constant chess match, constant battle.
Mark, you brought up Jason Tatum a minute ago. Who would you like to see on Tatum to try and slow him down? What change would you make defensively to try and slow down Tatum?
Well, I thought the 76ers did a good job of starting the game off. I believe they had Ben on Rozier, they had Rocco on Tatum, and they had JJ on Smart. I like that matchup because I thought at the beginning of the game, I thought Rocco was doing an extraordinary job, and I thought Ben was doing a good job on Rozier. So I like that matchup. It's just that the game is 48 minutes, and second half guys got hot, and that's when Boston made their run. But with that being said, I really like Rocco on Tatum. Oh, I actually like Ben on Tatum. Tatum cannot get off with Ben Simmons guarding him. He can't get off with Rocco's on his game defensively. That's a fact to me. I'll take them odds any day with Ben guarding Tatum. But then you got to say if he's on Tatum, then who's on Rozier? I actually like both those. I like Rocco and Ben Simmons on those two, and I'll live with the matchup with JJ on Smart. Because Jay Smart is not a shooter. Even though he's been shooting these threes like he's the reincarnation of Ray Allen, I like with JJ. If I got to pick my poison and if I got to let somebody get off on me, I'll take Smart getting off on me because he's not an offensive-minded player.
Yeah, 4 for 10 last night. By the way, Boston shot 48 from 3 in Game 1, 42% last night. I mean, we keep saying they're not going to shoot like that again. They shot pretty well last night. Marc Jackson, NBC Philadelphia. How about Dario? Looks like a lost guy out there right now.
For me, I truly believe Boston has no one that can guard Dario. So I was coming into this series real confident that Dario will find a way to get off. Because you got a Horford. Horford is going to either guard Ben or he's going to guard Joel. So with that being said, that means that leaves everybody else to pick and choose who they want to guard. And I don't think they have anybody to guard Dario. You put a smaller guy on him, he can take him from the post. You put a big Baines on him, he can take him from the wing. So, a lot of moments they have Tatum guard Dario, and Dario started to get off a little bit. He struggled a little bit, but not as much as Game 1. And Dario's such a smart player. I think he'll figure it out as the series going on. And I think with every game, he will get better. So I expect Game 3 to be a lot better than Game 2.
Okay, couple more for Mark real quick. Biggest adjustment that you want to see made in Game 3?
Starting the game off defensively, I like the combination of JJ on Smart. I don't like the 76ers doing all the switching because Boston does a great job of finding a mismatch. And it's not up Brad Stevens jumping and calling plays. They do it as players, as individuals finding a mismatch and exploiting it. I want to see less switching. I'm going to see more so with JJ ending up on Smart, Tatum, and Jalen Brown and Webber being guarded by Rocco or Ben Simmons. I think that there's not enough communication on the defense by the 76ers, so I don't like the switching. I would like to see less switching by them.
The big questions were obviously Ben Simmons, which we touched on, and a lot of people talking about Brown, that Stevens is really getting the better of him, that Brown had a really bad night. Do you echo those sentiments that Brown did not have a good night last night?
Jalen Brown, are you talking about Brett Brown? Who are you talking about?
Brett Brown.
Oh, it depends on how you look at it. You know, if you look at it from a fan point of view, people say he was 0 for 2. He was 0 for 2 and not calling the timeout. People say he was 0 for 2 for not leaving TJ in the game over Ben, as far as those two decisions. But me, like I said, I kind of see it differently. I actually see the other way. I think the timeout can go either way. It depends on the personnel you have on the floor, the amount of veteran leadership you have on the floor, and if you've been working on those things, because that could go either way. But the Ben Simmons TJ thing, I think you got to ride with Ben. I think you got to bring Ben back in. He's been consistent the whole game. So for me, the first thing, the timeout can go either way. But I think the Ben Simmons TJ McConnell thing is a lock play for me. Ben has to come back in the game.
All right, Marc Jackson, Sixers, NBC pre- and post-game analyst, NBC Sports Philadelphia, Game 3, 5 o'clock. Sixers must hold home court here. They got to get these two, send it back to Boston. We'll see it all unfold. 5 o'clock, 97.3 ESPN. Mark, we will see you shortly.
See you in a little bit, guys. Have fun.